Well, we're going to turn the page now to this issue coming out of Alabama. Healthcare providers in Alabama are celebrating a major victory after the state's Republican governor signed a bill into law to protect access to IVF, in vitro fertilization, for patients and for their doctors. This comes after that unprecedented ruling from the state Supreme Court last month, which said that frozen embryos created for IVF are considered, quote, children under Alabama law, and people can be held legally responsible if the embryos are destroyed. One of those healthcare providers impacted by the ruling is Beth Malizia of Alabama Fertility, the largest private practice in the state. Alabama Fertility first shut down after the state Supreme Court decision, but has since resumed services thanks to that law that was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. Practice says they're thrilled about the news and are excited to resume the full scope of our fertility services, which includes proceeding as planned with IVF. We're happy to have Dr. Beth Malizia, fertility physician and co-owner of Alabama Fertility, with us now. So, doctor, give us a sense of what you and your practice have been dealing with since the ruling and now the legislation, kind of this, pendulum going back and forth. And do you truly feel protected at this point by the new law?
So the last few weeks here have been quite intense, both for ourselves and for our patients. We've made many distressing phone calls, talked to patients with sort of heartbreaking news that we were going to have to modify their plan of care and limit some of the specific IVF procedures that we're doing. So we were very excited to be back at work. We did embryo transfers yesterday. We had a little toast with our staff who have supported us through this as well. So happy to be back to doing our usual full scope of care. Still a little anxious about what the future may hold, but certainly feel protected from this legislation to move forward.
So it did the trick. So what services, since you've resumed, have you been prioritizing, and with mindful, of course, of patient privacy? Are you able to share the number of embryo transfers your practice have done, or the number of procedures rescheduled at this point?
Sure. So over the last 2 weeks, we have been doing all of our normal routine care. So seeing patients in the office, doing our surgeries, doing some minor office procedures. The two things that we have held on were frozen embryo transfers and on starting patients through the IVF process. Now, if they're already in the IVF process, already on medications, it wouldn't have been a safe move for them to stop those things. So we did continue those patients through. So there were a handful of fresh patients that needed to stop treatment, and there were maybe about 20 to 25 patients that we had to hold on their frozen embryo transfers in the last couple of weeks. And I put 3 embryos in yesterday and was so excited to be able to just be back at work.
Absolutely. And a lot of people may not know this case that state Supreme Court ruled on was a wrongful death of a minor case. And the court very specifically said under that law, given the state's precedents, the fertilized embryos would be considered children, born with the same rights as born children. What the court left unanswered, though, is whether the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution would apply to your work right across the board. Would such a case change? In other words, is the door still open to a much more aggressive regulation of your practice and of this kind of care?
We hope not. We practice with many various guidelines that we utilize both clinically and within our laboratory. So we're already practice guidelines in place. We spend lots of time talking with patients about their specific concerns, anything that they need to do for themselves, specifically for their cycle. So there's a lot of doctor-patient conversations that already go on that address, I think, some of the concerns that are out there. So our goal in this, not only with the last 2 weeks of getting to where we are with this legislation, but has also been to educate lawmakers as to what is the IVF process, what's the physiology of this, how do we talk to patients, how do we counsel patients through this process, hopefully to alleviate some of the concerns that are already there. If there is more discussion of what we need to do from a legislative standpoint, we have reached out and offered our support. We'd like to be a part of that process, both us and the patients. The patient organization, Fight for Alabama Families, that has arose from the last 2 weeks. We would all like to be a part of the process and a part of the discussion.
And it sounds like the legislators gotten the message. So while the state Supreme Court doesn't specifically ban IVF treatments. Clearly, it caused a lot of fear and uncertainty for infertility care in Alabama. Here's what one patient told our reporter, Elizabeth Schulze.
I think the biggest takeaway, and I think something that has given me a lot of hope, is that there are a lot of people who didn't realize how the political process applied to them, who have kind of been engaged throughout this process. And I think now they've realized how directly impacted they are by this and are becoming more engaged in that process.
So, doctor, is that the kind of thing you were hearing from your patients?
Yes, 100%. So that's Corinne, one of the major organizers from the patient side of, Fight for Alabama Families here. And she has been amazing. She knows the system, and most of us don't. That's another patient of mine that you're showing a picture of right now, who also has never been an advocate. These are patients. These are patients who are quietly trying to undergo care to grow their families. So one of the most important and most heartwarming things about the last couple of weeks has been the outpouring of support that we've gotten, not just from people who know about this, but from these patients themselves who are going through this day by day and suffering through the anxiety and stress that this process involves. And now with the Alabama Supreme Court just increased their stress and anxiety, but they rose to the occasion, got involved. There were hundreds of patients at the courthouse, including 4 of us as docs over the last 3 days of, being there. We made countless phone calls. Patients made over 32,000 emails to legislators over the last couple of weeks. So that is fantastic to watch that having an effect and having the voices heard.
What a journey it has been, Dr. Beth Malizia. We thank you for being with us, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.